My name is Helen, and I am 56 years old. The scar running down my face has been part of me for 20 years now. Most people stare, some look away, but I have learned to live with it. When I met my son's fiancée for the first time, she looked at me and laughed. "At least you don't need a Halloween mask, you're scary enough as it is." Her words cut deep. But when her parents walked into the room and saw me, they burst into tears. They knew exactly who I was, even if their daughter had no idea what I had sacrificed to save her life. Before I tell you how a cruel joke turned into a moment of truth, please let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe, because this story will show you why we should never judge someone by their appearance. Stay with me to find out what happened 20 years ago that changed everything. I live in Seattle, Washington, in a small house on the outskirts of the city. For 25 years, I worked as a firefighter. It was not an easy job, but it was meaningful. Every day I put on that heavy gear, walked into burning buildings, and did whatever it took to save lives. I retired 5 years ago, and now I spend my time volunteering. I teach children about fire safety at local schools. The kids always listen carefully when I tell them stories about what can happen if they are not careful. My husband passed away 12 years ago from a heart condition. We had a good marriage 30 years together before he left me. I miss him every day, but I have learned to live alone. I keep busy with my volunteer work, my garden, and my small circle of friends. Most of them are fellow firefighters retired like me. We understand each other in ways others cannot. We have all seen things that stay with you long after the flames are out. My son Marcus is my pride and joy. He is 30 years old now, an architect at a large firm downtown. He designs beautiful buildings, and he is very good at what he does. After his father died, Marcus became even more protective of me. He calls me every single day, sometimes twice. He visits on weekends, brings groceries, fixes things around the house. I tell him I can manage on my own, but he insists. That is just the kind of man he is. Caring, thoughtful, responsible. The scar on my face came from a fire 20 years ago. I was 36 at the time, experienced, confident in my skills. It was 3 in the morning when the call came in. A large apartment building downtown was engulfed in flames. By the time we arrived, smoke was pouring out of every window on the upper floors. People were screaming, trapped inside their homes. My team and I did not hesitate. We grabbed our equipment and ran in. On the 3rd floor, we found a family, a husband, a wife, and their 7-year-old daughter. They were huddled in a bedroom, the door blocked by debris. I could hear them coughing, crying, begging for help. I used my axe to break through, but as I stepped inside, a beam from the ceiling gave way. It swung down like a pendulum, the edge sharp and burning. I pushed the little girl out of the way, and the beam caught my face. I felt the heat, the pain, the blood running down my cheek. But I did not stop. I carried that child out first, then went back for her parents. All 3 of them survived. At the hospital, they stitched me up. More than 30 stitches from my forehead down to my cheek. The doctor said the scar would fade, but never disappear completely. At first, I felt self-conscious. I avoided mirrors, wore my hair down to cover as much as I could. My husband held me one night and said, "That scar shows how brave you are. Never hide it." Over time, I came to accept it. It is part of my story now, a reminder of what I chose to do with my life. Marcus grew up proud of me. He would tell his friends at school that his mom was a hero. When other kids asked about my scar, he would say, "My mom got that saving people from a fire." He never saw it as ugly or shameful. He saw it as a badge of honor, and he taught me to see it that way too. That is how I raised him, to judge people by their actions, not their appearance, to value kindness over beauty, courage over comfort. My life now is simple and peaceful. I have my book club at the library every Tuesday. I tend to my garden growing tomatoes and roses. I volunteer at the fire station, helping with community outreach programs. I am not wealthy, but I have enough. My pension covers my bills, and I have a little saved for emergencies. I do not need much. Happiness, I have learned, does not come from money or looks. It comes from knowing you lived a life that mattered. One Saturday afternoon in October, Marcus came to visit. He had that look on his face, the one he gets when he has big news. We sat down at my kitchen table with cups of coffee, and he could barely contain his excitement. "Mum, I have something important to tell you," he said, his eyes bright. "I have been seeing someone for 8 months now. Her name is Brittany, and I asked her to marry me. She said yes." My heart swelled with joy. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I am so happy for you, sweetheart," I said. "Tell me about her. What is she like?" Marcus leaned back in his chair, a smile spreading across his face. "She is amazing, Mum. Beautiful, smart, ambitious. She works as a marketing manager at a fashion company. We met through mutual friends at a networking event. I knew right away there was something special about her." He described Brittany in glowing terms. 27 years old, 3 years younger than him, from a well-off family on the east side of Seattle. Graduated from a prestigious business school. Always impeccably dressed, confident-driven. She knows what she wants and goes after it, Marcus said. I admire that about her. She is not afraid to speak her mind. As I listened, I felt a small knot form in my stomach. That phrase, "not afraid to speak her mind," sometimes meant different things, but I pushed the worry aside. My son was happy, and that was what mattered. Marcus told me he wanted to arrange a meeting soon. "I want you two to meet and get to know each other," he said. "I know you will love her." I smiled and nodded, but inside I felt nervous. Meeting a potential daughter-in-law is always significant. I wanted to make a good impression. I wanted her to see that even though I did not come from wealth or high society, I had raised a good man. As long as she makes you happy and treats you well, that is all I need to know, I told him. Before he left that day, Marcus hugged me tight. "She will love you, Mom." "Everyone does," he said. I held on to those words as the week went on. I tried not to overthink it, but I could not help wondering what Brittany would think of me. Would she see past the scar? Would she understand that I was more than my appearance? I had faced down fires and collapsing buildings without fear, but the thought of meeting this woman made me anxious in a way I had not felt in years. I spent the following days preparing. Marcus had made reservations at an upscale Italian restaurant downtown for Sunday brunch. I went through my closet, trying to find something appropriate. I did not own many fancy clothes. My wardrobe consisted mostly of practical items, jeans, and comfortable shirts. Finally, I settled on a navy blue blouse and black dress pants, simple but clean and presentable. I stood in front of the mirror on Sunday morning, brushing my hair back from my face. The scar was visible as always. I could have tried to cover it with makeup, but I never wore much. I was who I was. The night before the meeting, I called my old friend Sarah. She had been a firefighter too, worked alongside me for 15 years before retiring to spend time with her grandchildren. "What if she does not like me?" I asked her over the phone. Sarah laughed. "Then she is not good enough for Marcus," she said firmly. "But I know you, Helen. You will handle this just fine. Be yourself. That is all you can do." Her words helped, but I still felt uneasy. I was not worried for myself. I had long ago stopped caring what strangers thought of my appearance. I was worried for Marcus. If Brittany could not accept his mother, it would cause problems in their marriage down the road. I prayed that night, something I did not do often. "Please let her be a kind person," I whispered into the darkness of my bedroom. "Please let her see past the surface." I wanted my son to have a partner who valued what truly mattered. Someone who would stand by him through hard times, who would love him for who he was, not what he could give her. I fell asleep hoping that Brittany was that person. Sunday morning arrived cold and clear. I drove downtown to the restaurant, arriving 15 minutes early. The place was elegant, all-white tablecloths and soft lighting. I felt out of place immediately, but I took a deep breath and walked to the host stand. I gave Marcus's name, and they led me to a small waiting area near the entrance. I sat on a plush bench, my hands folded in my lap, trying to calm my racing heart. This is just a lunch, I told myself. Just a chance to meet her. Everything will be fine. At exactly noon, Marcus and Brittany walked through the door. I stood up, smoothing down my blouse. Marcus saw me first and smiled, waving me over. Brittany was beside him, her hand in his. She was stunning. There was no other word for it. Tall and slender, with long blonde hair that fell in perfect waves past her shoulders. She wore a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly pension, paired with high heels and a handbag I recognized from magazine advertisements. Her makeup was flawless, her nails painted a deep red. She looked like she had stepped out of a fashion magazine. Marcus reached me first, giving me a quick hug. "Mom, you look great," he said warmly. Then he turned to the woman beside him. "Brittany, this is my mom, Helen." Brittany's eyes traveled slowly from my face down to my shoes, taking in every detail. When her gaze landed on the scar running down my left cheek, she paused. For just a moment, I saw something flicker in her expression. Distaste, maybe, disgust. It was gone quickly, replaced by a neutral mask, but I had seen it. She did not extend her hand. She just gave a small nod and said, "Hi," in a flat tone. We walked to our table, and I tried to ignore the cold reception. Maybe she is just nervous, I thought. Meeting the mother can be stressful. I smiled at her as we sat down, determined to make this work. "So Brittany Marcus tells me you work in marketing," I asked, hoping to start a conversation. She glanced at me briefly. "Yes, at a fashion company. It is very demanding," she said, then turned to Marcus and started talking about a project at work. I sat there listening, trying to find an opening to join in. But every time I spoke, Brittany gave short answers and redirected the conversation back to Marcus. Throughout the meal, it became painfully clear that Brittany had no interest in getting to know me. She talked about expensive restaurants she and Marcus had visited, vacations they were planning, the kind of wedding she wanted. Everything she said revolved around luxury status appearances. When I asked about her family, she said, "They are fine," and left it at that. She did not ask me a single question, not about my work, my life, nothing. It was as if I were invisible. Marcus tried his best to include me, asking about my week, my volunteer work at the schools. I could see the discomfort in his eyes as he realized how coldly Brittany was treating me. But he did not say anything. Maybe he thought it would get better with time. Or maybe he did not want to cause a scene in public. I just wanted the meal to end. My appetite was gone, replaced by a heavy knot in my stomach. After the main course, Marcus excused himself to use the restroom. The moment he left, the tension at the table became suffocating. Brittany looked at me with those cold eyes, and I knew something was coming. "So you were a firefighter?" she asked, her tone mocking. "Yes," I said carefully. "For 25 years. It was an honor to serve." She let out a short laugh. "I guess that explains the look." I frowned. "The look?" "Your face," she said, gesturing vaguely. "The scar. Must be hard living with that." Her words hit me like the physical blow, but I kept my voice steady. "It is from saving people," I said. "I am proud of it." Brittany leaned back in her chair and laughed louder this time, drawing glances from nearby tables. "Proud? Seriously, I mean, at least you don't need a Halloween mask. You're scary enough as it is." The air left my lungs. I sat there stunned, unable to believe what I had just heard. She was not done. "I hope our kids don't inherit anything from your side," she continued, examining her nails. "That would be unfortunate." Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of her. I clenched my hands under the table, my nails digging into my palms. How could Marcus's fiancée, the woman he wanted to spend his life with, be so cruel? How could she look at me, a stranger who had done nothing to her, and say such vile things? Before I could respond, Marcus returned to the table smiling. "Did I miss anything?" he asked cheerfully. Brittany's face transformed instantly. She reached over and took his hand, smiling sweetly. "Nothing, honey. Your mom and I were just getting to know each other." The lie came so easily to her. Marcus looked at me and I forced a smile. I could not ruin his happiness. Not yet. Not like this. The week after that terrible lunch felt like the longest of my life. I could not stop thinking about Brittany's words. At night, I lay awake replaying the scene over and over, the way she looked at me with disgust, the casual cruelty in her voice, the certainty that she had done nothing wrong. I wanted to tell Marcus, but how could I? He was so happy, so in love. If I told him what she said, it would shatter him. And what if he did not believe me? What if he thought I was just being difficult, unable to accept that he was getting married? I confided in Sarah during one of our coffee meetups. She makes me sick, I told her, my voice shaking. The things she said, Sarah. She called me scary. She said she hopes her children don't inherit anything from me. Sarah's face darkened with anger. You need to tell Marcus. He deserves to know what kind of person she really is. But I shook my head. He would not believe me. She was so sweet when he was around. It would be my word against hers. Sarah reached across the table and gripped my hand. Then wait. People like that always reveal themselves eventually. Just be patient. I tried to follow Sarah's advice, but patience was hard when every fiber of my being wanted to protect my son. A week later, Marcus called with news. Brittany's parents want to host a dinner so both families can meet, he said excitedly. It is this Friday at their house in Bellevue. Can you make it, Mum? My stomach churned at the thought of spending an entire evening with Brittany, but I could not refuse. Of course, I said. I will be there. Marcus gave me the address and told me to arrive at 7. I spent the rest of the week dreading it. Friday evening came too quickly. I dressed in the same navy blouse and black pants I had worn to the restaurant. I drove across the bridge to Bellevue, watching the city lights reflect off the water. The address Marcus gave me led to a neighborhood I had only seen in magazines. Enormous houses with manicured lawns, 3-car garages, gates at the end of long driveways. I felt out of place in my old sedan, but I kept driving until I found the right house. It was massive, 2 stories, with white columns and a circular driveway. I parked on the street and walked up to the front door. Marcus was already there. He opened the door before I could knock, pulling me into a hug. You look great, Mom, he said, though I could see concern in his eyes. He had noticed how quiet I had been lately. Brittany stood in the foyer behind him, wearing a cocktail dress that probably cost more than my car payment. She glanced at me with thinly veiled annoyance, but said nothing. My parents will be down in a minute, she said coldly, then turned and walked into the living room. Marcus and I followed. The living room was like something out of a design magazine. Leather furniture, expensive artwork on the walls, a chandelier hanging from the ceiling. Everything screamed wealth and status. I sat down on the edge of the sofa, feeling more uncomfortable by the second. Marcus sat beside me, making small talk about his week. Brittany stood near the window, checking her phone pointedly, ignoring us both. The tension in the room was suffocating. I could not wait for her parents to arrive so we could get this dinner over with. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs, a man's voice saying something I could not quite make out, followed by a woman's laugh. Brittany looked up from her phone. That is them, she said. Marcus stood straightening his tie. I remained seated, my hands folded in my lap, bracing myself for another awkward evening. 2 people entered the living room, a couple in their early 60s. The man was tall with graying hair, wearing a well-tailored suit. The woman had brown hair and kind eyes, dressed in an elegant evening gown. They were smiling as they walked in, ready to greet their guests. Marcus stepped forward. These are Brittany's parents, Robert and Patricia, he said, gesturing to them. And this is my mum, Helen. Robert and Patricia turned to look at me. The smiles froze on their faces. Patricia's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes going wide. Robert took a step back, his face draining of color. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Patricia's eyes filled with tears. Oh my God, she whispered. It is you. Robert's voice cracked as he said, Helen, is that really you? I stood slowly confused. Yes, I said. Do we know each other? Patricia crossed the room in 3 quick steps and grabbed my hands, her tears spilling over. You saved us, she said, her voice breaking. You saved our lives. Robert was right behind her, his own eyes wet. 20 years ago, he said. There was a fire in our apartment building. We were trapped on the 3rd floor with our daughter. Patricia was sobbing now. We thought we were going to die. The smoke was so thick we could not breathe. And then you came. You broke through the door, found us in the bedroom. The memories came flooding back. The apartment fire. The family huddled in the corner, terrified. The little girl with blonde hair coughing and crying. I remember I said quietly, "You carried our daughter out. First." Robert continued. "Then you came back for us. You were hurt. Your face was bleeding so much, but you did not stop." Patricia touched my cheek gently near the scar. "You got this saving our baby. The beam fell and you pushed her out of the way. We never got to thank you. The hospital said you left before we could visit." I nodded slowly. I did not need thanks. I was just doing my job. Robert looked at me with such gratitude, it made my chest ache. "We owed you everything," he said. "Our daughter, our lives. That little girl you saved," Patricia said, turning to look at Brittany. That was Brittany. The room went completely silent. Everyone turned to stare at Brittany. She stood by the window, her face pale, her mouth slightly open. What she said weakly, "No, that cannot be." Patricia wiped her tears and nodded. "You were so young, sweetheart. Maybe you do not remember, but this woman risked her life for you." Robert pointed to the scar on my face. "That scar," he said, his voice firm. "She got it saving you. A beam fell from the ceiling, and she pushed you out of the way. It could have killed you, but she took the hit instead." Brittany's eyes moved from her father to me, then back again. She looked like she might be sick. Her hands trembled as she gripped the back of a chair for support. I could see the realization dawning on her face, the memory of what she had said to me at the restaurant. "At least you don't need a Halloween mask. You're scary enough as it is." The words hung in the air between us, unspoken, but deafening. Marcus looked from Brittany to me, confusion written all over his face. "Mom, what is going on?" he asked. I took a deep breath. This was not how I wanted him to find out, but there was no avoiding it now. "At the restaurant last week," I said, keeping my voice steady, "when you went to the bathroom, Brittany said some things to me." Marcus turned to Brittany, his jaw tight. "What things?" Brittany opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I continued. "She made fun of my scar. She said I look scary, that I do not need a Halloween mask. She said she hopes your future children do not inherit anything from my side, because that would be unfortunate." Marcus's face went from confusion to shock to anger in the span of seconds. "Is this true?" he asked Brittany, his voice dangerously quiet. Brittany looked down at her hands, unable to meet his eyes. I did not know," she stammered. "I did not mean." Marcus cut her off. "Did you say those things or not?" Brittany's silence was answer enough. Patricia let out a choked sob. "Brittany, how could you? How could you say such things to the woman who saved your life?" Robert shook his head in disbelief. "That is not how we raised you. That is not who you are supposed to be." I felt a strange calm settle over me. For so long I had carried the weight of her cruelty in silence, afraid to hurt Marcus. But now, standing in this beautiful house, surrounded by people who finally understood, I felt free. I looked at Brittany and spoke clearly. "I did not save you, so you could grow up to be cruel," I said. Brittany finally looked up, tears streaming down her face. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I did not know." "It does not matter if you knew or not," I replied. "What matters is how you treat people. You saw my scar and decided I was less than you. You judged me without knowing anything about me, about what I had done or who I was." Marcus pulled off his jacket, his hands shaking with anger. "I thought I knew you," he said to Brittany. "But I was wrong." Brittany reached for him. "Marcus, please. I made a mistake." "A mistake is forgetting to call someone back," Marcus said, stepping away from her touch. "What you did was intentional cruelty. You looked at my mother, the woman who raised me, who taught me everything I know about kindness and courage, and you mocked her. You insulted her, and you did it knowing I was not there to defend her." Marcus turned to me and I saw tears in his eyes. "Mum, I am so sorry." I had no idea. You have nothing to apologize for, I told him gently. You did not do this. He shook his head. I should have seen it. I should have noticed how she treated you. I ignored the signs because I did not want to believe it. He looked back at Brittany, and his expression hardened. My mother is the bravest person I know. She ran into burning buildings while everyone else ran out. She saved lives, including yours apparently, and you repaid her by making fun of a scar she got protecting a child. Your life. Brittany was crying openly now, her makeup running down her cheeks. Please, Marcus, I will change. I will be better. People do not change overnight, Marcus said coldly. This is who you are. This is what you think of people who do not look perfect or dress in designer clothes. I cannot marry someone like that. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I was going to give this back to you tonight anyway, he said, holding up the engagement ring. I have been thinking about this all week, about how unhappy you seemed when we were not at fancy restaurants or talking about expensive things. But this, he gestured around the room, this seals it. I am done. Brittany collapsed into a chair sobbing. No, please. I love you. Love is not just about words, Marcus said quietly. It is about actions. And your actions have shown me everything I need to know. He turned to me. Let's go, Mum. I am ready to leave. I looked at Robert and Patricia one more time. They both looked devastated, ashamed of their daughter. Before we left, I had one more thing to say. I walked over to Patricia and took her hand. I am glad you and Robert are well, I said sincerely. That is all I ever wanted. Patricia hugged me tightly, whispering apologies into my shoulder. We are so sorry, she said. We did not know she had become this way. Robert stepped forward. We will talk to her. We will make sure she understands what she has done. I nodded. She is your daughter, but she needs to learn compassion. Not just because it is right, but because this world needs more kindness, not less. With that, Marcus and I walked out of the house. Behind us, I could hear Brittany crying, her parents trying to console her, but I did not look back. Marcus held my arm as we walked to our cars. I am so proud of you, I told him, for standing up for what is right. He hugged me tightly. I am proud to be your son, he said. The drive home that night felt longer than usual. My mind kept replaying the evening over and over. The shock on Robert and Patricia's faces when they recognized me. The horror on Brittany's face when she realized what she had done. The strength in Marcus's voice as he defended me. I had gone into that house expecting another uncomfortable evening. I had not expected justice, validation, or closure, but somehow I had received all three. Marcus followed me home in his car. When we arrived, he came inside and we sat at my kitchen table drinking tea. Neither of us spoke for a while. Finally, Marcus broke the silence. I feel like such a fool, Mum. I brought her into your life. I let her hurt you. I reached across the table and covered his hand with mine. You are not a fool, I said firmly. You saw the best in someone. That is not a weakness. It is a strength. But she hurt you, he said, his voice breaking. And I survived, I replied. I have survived much worse than unkind words. Marcus looked down at his tea. How did you stay so calm tonight, in that house, when you were talking to her? If I had been you, I would have lost it. I smiled sadly, because I learned long ago that angry words do not heal anything. They just create more pain. What she said to me was cruel, yes, but responding with more cruelty would not have changed her. It would have only made me feel worse. Marcus shook his head in wonder. I am proud to be your son, he said again. And I am proud of you for standing up for what is right, I told him. That took courage. In the weeks that followed, Brittany tried repeatedly to contact Marcus. She called his phone dozens of times, left voicemails begging for another chance. She sent text messages saying she was sorry that she would change, that she had made a terrible mistake. Marcus did not respond to any of them. He had made his decision, and he stuck to it. I was proud of him for that. It would have been easy to go back to believe her promises. But Marcus knew better. He knew that someone who could be that cruel to a stranger was not someone he could trust with his heart. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after the dinner, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Brittany standing on my porch, holding a bouquet of flowers. Her eyes were red and swollen, like she had been crying for days. "I am so sorry, Helen," she said, her voice hoarse. "Please forgive me." I stood in the doorway, not inviting her in. "I do not need your apology, Brittany," I said calmly. "But you need to understand something." She looked at me, waiting. "Beauty fades, wealth can be lost, but character is forever. You need to work on yours." Brittany's lip trembled. "Can you tell Marcus to give me another chance? Please, just talk to him." I shook my head. "That is not my decision to make. But if you truly want to change, do it for yourself, not to win back a man. Real change comes from within, not from trying to fix the consequences of your actions." I closed the door gently but firmly. Through the window, I watched her stand there for a moment before walking back to her car. She drove away slowly, and I never saw her again. A week later, Robert and Patricia reached out to me. They called and asked if I would be willing to meet with them. I agreed, but I suggested we meet at a coffee shop rather than their home. I wanted neutral ground. We sat in a corner booth, and they looked older than they had at the dinner, worn down by shame and disappointment. "We are deeply sorry for what Brittany did," Patricia said immediately. Robert nodded. "We have been too lenient with her over the years. We gave her everything she wanted, never made her work for anything. She grew up thinking beauty and money were all that mattered." I listened as they explained how they had spoiled Brittany, how they had not taught her the value of hard work or empathy. "We are ashamed," Robert said. "This is our fault as much as hers." I shook my head. Children make their own choices. You can guide them, you can teach them, but ultimately they decide who they become. Brittany is an adult. She is responsible for her own actions. Patricia pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. "We wanted to thank you properly. We never did all those years ago." I opened the envelope and saw a check for a large amount of money. I pushed it back across the table. "I cannot accept this. I was doing my job," Robert insisted. "Please, let us do something to show our gratitude." I thought for a moment. If you want to help, donate this to the Firefighter Charity Fund. They support families of firefighters who were injured or killed in the line of duty. It is a cause that means a lot to me. Patricia's eyes filled with tears again. "We will. Thank you for being who you are." We left the coffee shop on good terms. I did not hold any anger toward Robert and Patricia. They were good people who had made mistakes as parents. They were trying to make amends, and I respected that. Marcus threw himself into his work after the breakup. He was hurting, I could see that. But he did not regret his decision. He spent more time with me, coming over for dinner several nights a week. We would sit on my porch, watching the sun set, talking about life. One evening he said, "I think I dodged a bullet, Mum." I smiled. "I think so too. Next time I will look for someone with a kind heart, not just a pretty face," he said. "That is my smart boy," I replied. Several months later, Marcus met someone new. Her name was Angela, and she was a teacher at an elementary school. She was nothing like Brittany. Angela wore simple clothes, laughed easily, and talked about her students with genuine affection. When Marcus brought her to meet me, Angela hugged me without hesitation. "Marcus told me you were a hero," she said warmly. "I am honored to meet you." In that moment, I knew my son had finally found the right person. 3 years have passed since that terrible dinner in Bellevue. I am 59 now, and my life has changed in beautiful ways. Marcus and Angela got married 2 years ago in a small ceremony in my backyard. It was perfect, just family and close friends, exactly what they both wanted. A year after that, they had a baby girl. They named her Sophia. She is 18 months old now, with Marcus's dark eyes and Angela's bright smile. She is the light of my life. Sophia loves to visit her grandma. When she toddles around my house, she always stops to look at my face. One day she reached up with her tiny hand and touched the scar on my cheek. "Boo-boo," she asked, her voice full of concern. I smiled and kissed her forehead. "Yes, baby. But it is a brave boo-boo." Angela, who was sitting nearby, took Sophia onto her lap. "Grandma is a hero," she told her daughter. "She saved people from fires." Sophia did not understand yet, but one day she would. One day I would tell her the whole story. I think about Brittany sometimes, though, not with anger anymore. Through Robert and Patricia, I heard that she moved to California. She got a job at a marketing firm in Los Angeles and seems to be doing well professionally. She never married, as far as I know. I do not wish her ill. I hope she learned something from what happened. I hope she became a better person. But that is not my concern anymore. I made peace with it all long ago. Looking back, I realized that night at the dinner changed all of us. Marcus learned to value character over appearance, substance over surface. He found a partner who loves him for who he is, not what he can provide. Robert and Patricia, I believe, became more aware of how they raised their daughter. They started volunteering at a shelter downtown, working to give back to their community. And Brittany, whether she knows it or not, lost something precious because she could not see past a scar. As for me, I learned that standing up for yourself does not always require anger or revenge. Sometimes it just requires honesty. Speaking your truth calmly and clearly can be more powerful than any harsh words. I did not yell at Brittany that night. I did not insult her back. I simply told her who I was and what I stood for. And that was enough. It was enough to show Marcus the truth. It was enough to shift the entire dynamic in that room. The scar on my face will always be there. Some days I notice it more than others, especially when I catch my reflection unexpectedly. But I have never regretted it. This scar represents a moment when I chose another person's life over my own comfort. It shows that I was willing to sacrifice, to endure pain, to do what was right. That is something to be proud of, not ashamed of. Brittany could not see that because she had been taught to value the wrong things. But that was her loss, not mine. I still volunteer at the fire station, teaching kids about safety. When they ask about my scar, I tell them the truth. I got it saving a family from a fire. Their eyes always go wide. "You are a hero," they say. I smile and tell them, anyone can be a hero. It is not about how you look or how much money you have. It is about what you do when someone needs help. That is the lesson I try to pass on, not just to those kids, but to Sophia as she grows. I want her to know that true beauty comes from kindness, bravery, and compassion. Marcus and Angela are wonderful parents. They are raising Sophia with the values that matter. She will grow up knowing that people should be judged by their hearts, not their faces. She will learn to see past the surface to appreciate what is real and lasting. And when she is old enough, I will tell her the story of how I got this scar. I will tell her about the fire, the little girl I saved, and how that same girl grew up to mock me years later. I will tell her about how her father stood up for what was right, even when it was hard. It will be a lesson about consequences, about choices, about living with integrity. We live in a world that worships beauty. Everywhere you look, there are advertisements showing perfect faces, perfect bodies, perfect lives. People spend fortunes on cosmetics, surgeries, treatments to hide any flaw. They believe that if they can just look good enough, they will be happy, successful, loved. But it is a lie. I have seen beautiful people with ugly souls. I have seen people with scars, disabilities, imperfections, who radiate kindness and joy. Appearance tells you nothing about a person's character, nothing about their courage, their compassion, their worth. Brittany was beautiful on the outside. There is no denying that. But her beauty was hollow. It did not make her happy, and it certainly did not make her kind. She used her looks as a weapon, judging others, while hiding behind her own perfect facade. And in the end, it cost her everything. She lost a good man who loved her. She lost the respect of her parents. She lost the chance to be part of a family that would have welcomed her with open arms if she had just been kind. All because she could not see past a scar. I do not hold anger toward her anymore. Anger is exhausting, and life is too short to carry that weight. I have chosen forgiveness not because she deserves it, but because I deserve peace. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting what happened or pretending it did not hurt. It means releasing the hold that pain has over you. It means deciding that you will not let someone else's cruelty define your happiness. Brittany got what she deserved that night when Marcus ended their engagement. Justice was served. I do not need to punish her further by holding on to bitterness. My life now is full and rich in ways that have nothing to do with money or status. I have a son who respects me, a daughter-in-law who loves me, a granddaughter who brings me joy every single day. I have friends who understand me, a community that values me, and work that gives me purpose. I have learned that happiness is not about having a perfect life. It is about appreciating what you have and finding meaning in the small moments. Watching Sophia laugh, listening to Marcus talk about his latest project, sitting in my garden with a cup of tea. These are the things that matter. People will always judge. It is human nature to make assumptions based on appearance. We are wired to notice differences, to categorize, to compare. But we also have the capacity to look deeper, to question our first impressions, to choose empathy over judgment. That is what separates the kind from the cruel. Brittany saw my scar and decided I was less than her. She did not stop to wonder about the story behind it. She did not think about what I might have endured, what I might have sacrificed. She just saw something that did not meet her standard of beauty and made her judgment. But Robert and Patricia saw the same scar and remembered. They recognized me not because of how I looked, but because of what I had done. They saw past the surface to the person underneath. That is the difference between shallow and deep, between superficial and meaningful. That is the lesson I hope Sophia learns as she grows. Look beyond the exterior. Ask questions. Seek to understand. Do not dismiss someone because they do not fit into a certain mold. You never know what someone has been through, what battles they have fought, what scars they carry, and why. That morning, 20 years ago, when I ran into that burning building, I did not think about what might happen to me. I did not worry about getting hurt or scarred. I heard a child crying, and I knew I had to help. That is what being a firefighter means. You put others before yourself. You risk your own safety to protect theirs. And yes, sometimes you pay a price. This scar was my price, but I would do it again in a heartbeat. Because that little girl lived. She grew up. She had a life, even if she turned out to be someone I would not have chosen. I still saved her, and that matters. If I could speak to Brittany now, I would tell her this. You were given a second chance at life because someone chose to save you. Do not waste it being cruel. Do not waste it judging others or chasing shallow things. Find what matters. Build a life of meaning. Be someone worth saving. I do not know if she would listen. People change only when they are ready, not when someone tells them to. But I hope somewhere deep down she learned something that night. I hope she looked in the mirror the next day and did not like what she saw. Not because of her appearance, but because of her character. As for Marcus, he is thriving. His architecture firm just promoted him to senior partner. He and Angela bought a house not far from me, so I get to see Sophia all the time. They are talking about having another child soon. Marcus still calls me every day just to check in. He tells me he is grateful for how I raised him, grateful that I taught him to see people for who they are. I could not ask for a better son. And Angela. Sweet Angela treats me like I am her own mother. She asks for my advice, includes me in family decisions, makes sure I am never alone on holidays. I am blessed. So here I am, nearly 60 years old, with a scar that will never fade, and a life that feels complete. I have faced down fires and cruel words. I have lost a husband and gained a daughter. I have saved lives and been mocked for it. Through it all, I have remained who I am. I did not let Brittany's cruelty change me or make me bitter. I did not let her words define me. I am still Helen. Still the woman who runs toward danger, not away from it. Still the woman who believes in kindness, courage, and doing what is right. And that is all I need to be. What about you? Have you ever been judged for something beyond your control? Have you faced cruelty from someone who did not know your story? How did you respond? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, Please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life stories like this one. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that true beauty comes from within, not from what we see in the mirror. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminded you that we all carry scars, visible or not. What matters is not whether we have them, but what they say about the choices we made and the lives we touched. Be kind, be brave, and never judge someone by their appearance. You never know what they have been through or what they have sacrificed. God bless you all, and may you find peace in your own journey.